you don't put your life on hold when your children are small at all, but you completely redirect who you are, right?
Mhm.
And it's all about them. And then there does come a time, it's like this crossroads where you're like, oh, it can be a little bit about me again. And what's that going to look like, all these years later?
Welcome to the How It Feels to Be a Mother podcast, where we dive into the emotional complexities and varied experiences of motherhood. I'm your host, Sarah Broberg. This judgment-free zone is a place where mothers can express their authentic feelings and experiences as whole human beings. In each episode, we'll explore the catalyst question at the heart of this movement. How does it feel to be a mother? Through engaging discussions with mothers from diverse backgrounds from around the world, we'll explore the complexity of emotions along the continuum of motherhood. Join us as we speak with mothers from all walks of life, from those with infants to those with adult children, uncovering the vast emotional continuum of motherhood. Whether you find motherhood to be a blessing or a challenge or somewhere in between, sometimes all at once, this podcast is here to validate your feelings and to break the stigma, shame, and guilt that can often accompany maternal experiences. Tune in and be a part of a movement that empowers mothers to embrace the emotional depths of what it really feels like to be a mother. Join the conversation. Welcome to the How It Feels to Be a Mother podcast. Today, we're discussing the emotional complexities of motherhood with Rebecca, a devoted mother and former nurse who shares her journey through motherhood's highs and lows. Rebecca opens up about the intense love and vulnerability that come with being a mom, explores how motherhood has transformed her identity and perspective, and discusses the dynamic shifts from enjoying playful moments with a young child to supporting a teenager forging his own path. She reflects on the challenging times, including a crucial medical situation with her son that tested her family's strength and resilience. This episode dives into the deep emotional currents of parenting, the joys and fears of raising a child, the psychological and emotional aspects of motherhood, and the personal growth that comes from the journey. Thank you so much for agreeing to this long overdue conversation.
Yes, I'm so excited.
Yay, yay. Okay. So as I talked about, and thank you for your permission to record this conversation. So you know the drill, you know the origin story at this point, but I'm not sure if you fully know the question. You probably do, since we've kind of already pre-launched. But the very first question to kick this off, this catalyst question, as I call it, is how does it feel to be a mother?
Yeah, this is the one that I anticipated. And I would say I have given this some thought, and I would say that for me, it's two very disparate emotions that you feel in parallel. One being the greatest love you could possibly imagine, takes your breath away, shocks you. You didn't anticipate it, right? And then the other, the greatest vulnerability you have ever felt. And they are constantly running in parallel as a parent. Um, Another thought I had, which I think goes along with that, is back whenever I was a nurse in the hospital, I was talking with some fellow nurses one day, and one of them said something. This was before my son Owen was ever born, um, years before Owen was born, and she was a parent of two kids in college, so she was on the other side. And she said, for me, being a parent is like your heart sprouts legs, flops out of your chest, and is roaming free in the world. And that has rung true to me so many times throughout the course of Owen's life. Um, and it really is like, yep, there's my heart, but I feel so vulnerable because there it goes, Couple of examples I was thinking of this morning. When Owen was about three, maybe 3.5, he took an interest. He's always loved sports. He took an interest in baseball and he wanted a baseball glove. And so I made a whole thing out of it. I took a day off work midweek and we went to Dick's and I got him the cutest, I still have it, of course, little leather baseball glove. A little baseball that was, soft on the outside, but just hard enough in the middle. So if you hit it, it would move a little bit. And we bought bases. We bought the little, I forget what it's called, like thing that you set the ball on to hit it when you're learning.
Oh, like the ball thing or whatever. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we went for ice cream and we went back and I put the bases around the backyard. And we literally spent all day just hitting that ball, cheering him on as he ran the bases. And it was just, I can still see him. He had this little Tweetsy Railroad baseball cap that he was wearing. I could still see him standing there, hitting that ball. And that night, he went to bed, and I came up to tuck him in and give him a kiss. And he was already asleep, and he was holding that glove.
Oh.
And to this day, I tear up a little bit when I tell that story, but it's so true. It's like, there's my heart. There it is. um, Whenever he was a baby, and this kind of, I think, plays to the vulnerability piece. Owen was born with a condition called craniosynostosis. It's a somewhat rare birth defect where the sutures in his skull fused prematurely in utero. And so essentially, his head was starting to, at about 4 months of age, when his pediatrician caught it, his head was starting to look like a little football. And if we hadn't have intervened surgically, he could have had brain damage in addition to a lot of, very malformed looking skull. So it was essential that we acted and act quickly. And it was a terrifying time. And I can remember um, we had to go to San Antonio for the surgery. And I can remember the surgeon coming and getting him that morning and taking him out. And Daniel and I were speechless. There he goes in his little hoodies with the surgeon. And neither one of us had words. And we were just standing there watching him walk away. And, there's that sense there goes my heart.
Mm.
And I repeatedly have felt that those two emotions in conjunction with one another over and over throughout the course of his life.
Mm.
Yeah.
One thing that I neglected to do at the top of the call was to provide a little context to your story. So typically I ask people to provide their age, their relationship status, your preferred pronouns, and the age of your child and their preferred pronouns.
Okay. So my age is 48. My preferred pronouns are she, her. I am married. Owen, our son, is 13, and his preferred pronouns are he, him.
Thank you. So, okay, back to the questions.
Yes.
Does the feeling of being a mother feel like you thought it would?
I don't know that I really had, no, I'll say no. I had no idea what it would feel like. And becoming a mother for me, I hate to say this, it was kind of an afterthought, really.
Mm-hmm.
I was never one of these people that like always wanted to be a mother, that always saw myself as a mother, that knew I wanted to have children. It was really that old biological clock. I was 35, and one day I woke up and thought, we've been married for a long time. We should have a kid, you know? And so fortunately it didn't take us very long because we waited till the very end. And so within a month and a half I was pregnant, and we just started planning for him, making his nursery. And I I didn't really have a lot of big expectations. It was just kind of like, oh, we're doing this now. And I think for me, the biggest surprise was how much I adored this human. And I didn't really see that coming. I remember right after he was born, his blood sugar started to drop, not unusual. He had just been through the birthing process and they were sewing me up and he was laying there and his blood sugar started to drop and they caught it and they said they needed to take him and give him like a glucose bottle. And it was the first time I ever felt that just like, I felt myself almost jump off the table while they're stitching me because it's like, oh, I'm with him now. That just sense of, oh, this child takes precedence of your universe. I didn't expect that. And obviously I couldn't jump off the table. And I remember telling Daniel, go, go, go with him. And I think we both in that moment felt it.
Mm.
Just our world shifted, and then it wasn't about us anymore. It was about him.
Mhm, mhm. How has it, you kind of touched on it a little bit. How has that feeling of being a mother changed over time for you?
Um, yeah, I think, being the mother now of a newly teenager with a very robust social life has been a bit of a surprise to me. And in the beginning, I think I really did grieve a little bit because you know, you miss story time and bath time and sitting on the floor and pushing matchbox cars for hours and running the bases on, outside with your new baseball kit and all the things that little boys really need their moms for, over time, it's been an evolution, it's been a process. It didn't happen overnight. But over time, you wake up one day and you're like, wow, they just don't need me like they used to, right? And that was initially a grieving process for me. I had to reframe and readjust, and I'm no longer the mother of a small child. I'm the mother of a teenager, and my job now is to help him become his own person. And I just, learned to start really savoring different things. So whereas before it was story time, bath time, playing on the floor, and now, it's those rides to and from the social events, to and from school or a sporting event, where it's just he and I in the car together. And maybe if you're lucky, you know, they'll feel chatty. And
I feel that so much.
right. And you just learn to savor new things.
Hmm. Hmm. So you already mentioned one of my questions was what surprises you about how it feels to be a mother?
Mhm. Well, now I did just answer that. I think now as a mother, I was surprised to have to change gears, grieve a little bit, realize they don't need you the way that they used to. So as a mom of a teenager, there have definitely been those surprises. When he was very small, I was surprised, like I said, just how much I loved this little person and suddenly couldn't really imagine or remember life before, you know?
Hmm.
In an instant overnight, everything shifts. And it's almost like, yes, you were your own person before, but it was like it all just kind of fades. And now you're a parent. And that surprised me. It surprised me that A, I would love him so much, and B, my whole mindset about my existence and how I relate to the world changed too.
Like what you're hearing? We'd love your feedback. Please leave a review. Totally touching on one of the themes that has kind of consistently come out of the conversations, which is sort of this parallel journey of growth, of personal growth, like as your child is developing and they're kind of coming into their own and figuring out who they are, like also as a parent, like that journey of personal growth too. that's just that's something that's come up repeatedly.
Mm-hmm. For sure. For sure. Because it is, especially as they get older, you suddenly realize, wow, I have some time on my hands that I didn't have before, even working full time at a really very busy job. I think you acclimate to a certain level of busy as a parent, especially probably a working parent. You acclimate to when they're small to this level of busyness that you don't know how you do it, right? You're just like, how did I get through that? How did I do that? And you do over and over and over. And then suddenly they're a teenager and they are developing their own life, their friends, they have sleepovers, they stay after school, sometimes long hours for sporting events. And suddenly you're like, oh, I have some time, you know? And that's been nice, like I've been able to read books in their entirety, which I hadn't done in years. And, thinking more about my career and kind of what direction I want to go in there. So yes, you don't put your life on hold when your children are small at all, but you completely redirect who you are, right?
Mhm.
And it's all about them. And then there does come a time, it's like this crossroads where you're like, oh, it can be a little bit about me again. And what's that going to look like, all these years later?
Mhm. Mhm. What's your favorite thing about what it feels like to be a mom?
Favorite. I just, I don't want to sound cliche, Sarah, but I really just love all of it. Um, I'd say my favorite is him, seeing who he is, seeing who he's becoming, and watching it throughout the journey, because kids go through so many little quirky stages and phases, and everyone is so valuable to you as you look back on their journey, I'm thinking of one in particular when he was like 6. He really, really looked up to my brother and he kind of saw him, I think, as what a man, using quotes here, should look like. Um, Wonderful relationship with Daniel, you know, loves his father dearly. But when he looked at his uncle Neil, he saw this very masculine, big, kind of loud man who hunts and fishes and wears camo. And there was something about that that really appealed to little Owen, right? And he really took it way too far. I can remember he had these little camo boots, and that was all he would wear for like a year and a half. Nothing else. Camo boots every day to school. Um, he used to actually shout at the top of his lungs, I'm a man. Don't know where he got that. He had a little like it wasn't we didn't even let him have a baby gun back then. I think it was a very real looking it wasn't Nerf, some kind of a gun that didn't shoot real bullets. And he would go out in the yard, head to toe, camo, sit in a pile of leaves and say he was waiting for the squirrels to come, you know? Um, that was such an Owen phase, right?
Mhm.
And I look back on it now and just love it so much, you know? Um, I remember being a little bit embarrassed when I would drop him off at school and head to toe camo. He went to this little Montessori school, this little hippie school, and here we would come, and here would come Owen with his head to toe camouflage. And the teacher would help him out of the car, and I'd be like, oh, I didn't pick out his clothes. But You know,
He is his own person.
in hindsight, that was part of his development. That was part of his growth. And I loved it. And now he's a totally different child, only wears Nike and Adidas and, sportswear and is very athletic and snowboards and rides bikes and not that child at all, but that was a phase that he needed to go through. And every phase is just really incredible. And I've loved witnessing it. And I still love witnessing who he is and who he's becoming.
Mm. What concerns you about what it feels like to be a mom?
I think back to that vulnerability. Um, you know, what makes us feel vulnerable when we love someone or something so much is all the things that can go wrong and all the things that, can happen in this world, in this life. And, suddenly you feel that on a level you've never felt it before. And so, of course, all parents are so concerned about their children and their well-being, the friends that they make at this age, who are their friends and do I know their parents? And what are they doing when you're not there? And what are the influences that are now more influential in his life than I am anymore, right? So is he choosing his friends wisely? What is he doing online? Oh my God. As hard as we try to control that, we can't. It's the wild, wild west, and we have little control. And hoping that you taught them well about online safety, and having guidelines in place that you hope will protect them. Um, you know, I worry about what he eats. I worry about, you know, who his friends are. I worry about his online activity. I worry about his health. But, there's so many, you can't even count them all. And you just have to kind of be like, okay, get it together. You've got this, and so does he, but yeah, it, there are many concerns.
One of the another theme that kind of has been emerging from these conversations is how the ways in which we were raised influences how we choose to raise our children. For some people, that's like 100% doing the same thing. For some people, it's like a mix and a match, and for some people, it's like I'm running, screaming in the other direction. So I wonder if you have any perspectives to share on that.
Yeah. I can probably, Daniel and I both, in many ways, are running and screaming in the other direction. I think that there are very valuable things that, especially my mother, taught me about nurturing a child. I think I have a very, very strong what they call, quote, maternal instinct because of her, because she was a very hands on parent, because she was very loving and nurturing and concerned about the foods that we ate and, having dinners at the table. And even though I grew up really in poverty, I never remember doing without because she, just had this way of, you go into a trashy apartment or trailer or wherever we lived at the time, and you paint the walls and you put, whatever decor out you can, and you make it feel like a home, and you make it comfortable for your family. And she did a really good job of that. So in those ways, I would like to say that I'm very much like my mother. But then, especially as Owen grows into his own person, I find myself being very different.
Are there people in your life with whom you talk about how it feels to be a mother?
Yeah. I have one very good friend who, Jenny, who is a phenomenal mother, in my opinion. And she and I, over the years, it seems like that kind of dominates our conversation. I mean, different friends have different dynamics, right? You and I are dear friends, and our dynamic is we talk about parenthood, right? But it's a little bit different. It's not the focus of our conversations. And for whatever reason, with Jenny and I, it really has been over the years. And she has an adopted daughter, and she's really shared with me a lot of the challenges that she faced, with an international adoption and a child that, spent a good part of its first year of life, without any parenting really. And the challenges that that has brought to her. And so really being able to witness that and kind of just be a listening ear and a friend to her during some of the challenges that she has faced. And then she's done the same thing for me. So I'd say Jenny is my parenting friend, the one that I go to when I have big challenges that I want to talk about mom to mom. Um, and then in other friendships, of course, it's such a big part of us that it's part of our conversation, but it's not necessarily doesn't necessarily dominate it. But yeah, I think I have one good friend that I talk to about parenting
Mhm.
the most.
Mhm. Okay, we're on the last question here. So I know time flies. Is there anything about how it feels to be a mother we haven't talked about that you would like to share?
So, in anticipation of this interview, I keep parenting journals. I have since Owen was a baby,
Oh, wow.
and I was looking through a parenting journal and I found something that I wrote about 3.5 years ago that I think really sums up a lot of my own feelings about motherhood. And it's just a short passage. Would you mind if I read it?
I would love for you to read it.
Okay. So, quick background. This was written 12/24/2020. So, this was right in the middle of the COVID um, pandemic when we were still quarantining, and we had been quarantined as a family for quite some time at that point, what, over a year. And um, we decided we could quarantine in a house on the beach, and we all needed desperately to get away. And so Owen, Daniel, and I, as well as our little dog, Lilo, rented a house on the beach. And it was Christmas. It was right in the middle of winter. And it was such a just needed retreat, release, just getting out of our four walls and reframing. And we sit up at night, put puzzles together. And it's just one of the best memories we have as a family together. Um, and Owen had a wetsuit and a boogie board, and he insisted, even though it was December, on swimming and riding his board. So, anyways, go ahead and read it. It says, yesterday, at one of the times, Owen insisted on taking his board into the ocean. Lilo, the dog, and I were walking, and Daniel was watching Owen intently. As I was walking, I saw him there, the setting sun glowing down on him directly, a lone boy in the cold December Atlantic, happy and beautiful, riding the waves.
Mm.
From afar, the sun was so bright, he almost looked like a mirage. I told myself to do something that moms often do, at least I do. Take a picture, Rebecca. Take a picture in your mind. Hold on to it always. Funny how my feeble brain seldom complies, but I continue to try. I was thinking about how parenting another human being is sometimes like that mirage of perfection in the sunset, fleeting and beautiful. We try so desperately to hold on to every second, to make the most, give our best, and teach in humility for what we do not know. But our children have their own path, their own hard lessons to learn, their own joys and sorrows to experience, and we can no more hold on or stop the clock than we can stop the setting of the sun. All we can do is tell our feeble brains to take pictures and hope we prepare them well for their journey ahead.
Oh my God, Rebecca, that's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yes, thank you for listening.
Oh, and thank you for this conversation. I'm so grateful to you for just the human being that you are, for the friendship that we have, for the friendship we have as a couple, for the friendship we have as teenage parents.
Yes.
Eating these things together. I'm just, you are the best, and you all are the best. And I'm just beyond grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. I love you very much.
I love you.
Learn more about how it feels to be a mother by visiting howitfeelstobeamother.com and following us on our socials. Please join the conversation. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on this podcast, including those of the host and guests, are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of any entity they represent. Appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The content presented is solely for general informational, educational, and entertainment purposes. The use of information provided on this podcast or materials linked from the podcast or website is at the user's own risk. It is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice for any medical or mental health condition they may have, and should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions.